Hello everyone! Welcome to Electrifying Economics. I'm Manisha, and in today's video we're going to be talking about production possibility curves. So without any further ado, let's get into the video. So today's topic, as you know, is production possibility curves. Before we begin, I would like to say that all the images I use is from this textbook in this video. Like the graph images are from this textbook. And now let's get into the content. Production possibility curves shows the maximum output for two goods and services within a given amount of resources. So this is one type of production possibility curves. These are straight lined, and whenever you have a straight line production possibility curve, it shows that it has a constant opportunity cost. If you don't know what opportunity cost is, please go check out my previous video right now. Go. And by constant opportunity cost, I mean that the opportunity cost does not change at any level of output. So here we see that at this end, when you have 0 units of rice, you produce 100 units of wheat. When you go from 100 to 75 units of wheat, you lose 25, but you gain 50. And when you go from 75 to 50, again, you lose 25, and then you gain another 50 units of rice, and so on and so on. So here we see that there's constant opportunity cost. Like you go down 25 units at each level of wheat, and you gain 50 at each level of rice. Okay, so these are curved PPC, and PPCs most of the times are curved because every time you don't have constant opportunity cost, you always have a differing or changing opportunity cost. So a curved PPC represents a differing opportunity cost at each level of unit or output. So like in this graph, we see that when you have 100 units of wheat, you have 0 units of rice. But when you go from 100 to 90, you lose 10 units of wheat and you gain 60 units of rice. Again, when you go from 90 to 75, you lose 15 units of wheat and you gain 30 units of rice. Again, when you go from 75 units of wheat to 55 units of wheat, you are at this level and you gain 30 units of rice. So here we see changing opportunity costs at each level. So how do you actually see the opportunity cost here? It is because opportunity cost, as I told in my previous videos, is basically the next best alternative foregone. So here, when you're producing 60 units of rice, you can't produce 100 units of wheat. You can only produce 90 units of wheat. So the opportunity cost of producing the extra 10 units of wheat is given up and you gain 60 units of rice. So this is how a production possibility curve shows opportunity cost. And at these two ends, we see that you can produce wheat by allocating all your resources, because you also use those resources which are the best at producing rice. You allocate those resources to producing wheat. Therefore, it shows, again, opportunity cost, and therefore you can't produce any rice when you're producing 100 units of wheat. And when you're at 150 units of rice, you can't produce any units of wheat. Like you see in the graph, it's 0 units of wheat, because at this end of the curve, you are using up all the resources which are there to produce wheat and rice, and you're only using those resources to produce rice. Therefore, basically you are allocating is the word you use, allocating the resources from producing wheat to producing rice. Allocating is basically taking the resources from one side of production and you're putting them into the other side of production. So now PPC for an economy. PPC is not only useful for just firms, it is useful for the economy as well, because it shows what type of goods or services an economy is mostly majorly producing. So a PPC for an economy has axes, which are capital goods and consumer goods. It doesn't matter where you label the capital or consumer goods, but you always need to have capital goods or consumer goods when the exam paper or when anyone asks for draw a PPC for an economy. So capital goods are those goods and services which are used to produce other goods, that is, the goods which are used in production. And consumer goods are those goods and services which are for the benefit of the consumers, like the people in the economy. Hence, more production of consumer goods will improve the living standards of the economy. More production of capital goods will not improve the living standards. Instead, it will lower the living standards of the people in the economy. So to make the point even clearer, the effect of production of consumer or capital goods in the economy are as follows. So when you produce more consumer goods, there is an increase in living standards of the people in the economy. Consumer goods examples are like bread, butter, houses, anything basically what we use. Clothes could be a consumer good as well. So those kinds of goods which are beneficial for consumers are called as consumer goods, and they improve living standards. When the economy produces more consumer goods, it's basically focusing on the people and it's going to improve the living standards in the economy. But on the other hand, more production of capital goods is really good for the long term. But in the short term, the consumers' living standards would decrease because those resources which are used to produce consumer goods are also being used in producing capital goods. Therefore, there is actually, it depends upon where you're in the curve. Like if you're at 100 units of capital goods, then you have like zero living standards or really low living standards for the people in your economy. But if you're in the middle around here, then it shows that there's low living standards, but it's not like zero living standards. So I'm saying is when you're producing capital goods, you allocate all the resources which are used in producing consumer goods to capital goods. And when you're doing the other way around, that is producing more consumer goods, would mean that you have to take those resources that are really good in producing capital goods as well and put it into producing consumer goods. So basically, more production of capital goods in the long term is very beneficial because when you have more capital goods, i.e. those are the goods which are used in producing other goods. So when you have that, you are able to produce more goods, more consumer goods in the long term, but in the short term, it's gonna not help the consumers. But yes, again, as I said, just reinforcing this point that in the long term, more production of capital goods is very beneficial for the economy because capital goods are goods which are used to produce other goods. So when you have more robots, more machines, then you're able to faster, quicken your process of producing consumer goods, more efficiency. Therefore, yes, there's economic growth in the long term, but in the short term, it's just going to cost the consumers living standards. And more production of consumer goods in the short term is very good, but in the long term, resources will run out. Therefore, there is scarcity as well. So there are different points on a PPC curve which show different things. Any point on the curve is achievable and shows efficiency because you're using all of your resources. So whenever you're on the curve, it shows that you are fully employed, in the sense you're using all the resources available in the economy and are producing a certain level of output. Either it could be Y, either it could be W, either it could be A, B, C, it could be any single point on the curve shows efficiency, and it is also achievable. But point Y is achievable and efficient, but there is more production of consumer goods. So again, as I said, there is very little amount of production of capital goods. And point W, on the other hand, shows more production of capital goods, but less production of consumer goods. And point X shows inefficiency. It is achievable, but it is inefficient because you're not using all your resources that is available in the economy. And point Z, it is out of the curve and it is not achievable at this level because you don't have those many resources to produce point Z output. So recap of the points on the curve is any point below the curve shows inefficiency because all the resources in the economy are not used. That is, resources are unemployed. So any point under the curve shows unemployment of resources. And just to say, resources here are factors of production. And any point on the curve shows efficiency because all the resources in the economy are employed, and therefore it just shows that the economy is very efficient and is not wasting any of its resources. And when you're outside the curve is not possible. It's not possible because you don't have those many resources available to produce that amount of goods or services, in this case, point Z. But it is possible to shift the PPC out from one curve, in this case, this curve where the arrow is pointing, to the outside curve. It is possible, but to do that, the economy would have to achieve economic growth. And this can be done by increasing the production of capital goods in the present. Therefore, in the future, this would lead to more production of consumer goods. Hence, this would lead to economic growth. One thing I would like to say here is this concept of economic growth, I've been telling it, I think in my previous or the video before that it's a concept which is very far from now, and you need to stay tuned to understand what economic growth is in full detail. But as of now, just know and understand that when you have more production of consumer goods, then there is an increase in economic growth because, firstly, more production of consumer goods, as I told before, leads to higher living standards. Hence, there will be an increase in economic growth. But again, to understand this whole concept in detail, you need to wait for my other videos because it's not a concept which is learned in the very start of your IGCSEs. It is learned in around middle or towards the end of IGCSE. So please stay tuned for my other videos. And by doing that, there would be a shift in the curve. Therefore, in the future, the economy would be able to produce the output Z. You don't have to only produce output Z. You can produce output anywhere on this curve. So that wraps up the concept of production possibility curves. If I was able to help you and make you understand the concept in more detail or better, can you please hit the like button, share this video. Also, don't forget to follow me on Instagram, and Also, please leave your comments down below on how I could improve my video quality. And also, this was a very different style of video, so please leave your comment down below if you liked it. And also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also hit the bell icon right next to it so you will be notified whenever a new video is posted. So that's it for this video. I hope to see you soon in my next video. Until then, happy economics!